how you guys learn, how you study, what works best for you, generally speaking. So those are the 2 goals for tonight. And then the bottom 3 would be for Thursday. All right, so I didn't share my sound. No, see how that works. All right, forgot to share my sound. All right, so I'm going to toggle back and forth before I click on the video. So a lot of the links are just there. So I'm sorry I didn't I should have told you there was a link in these pieces. So when you look at the PDF still has them. I didn't contextualize any of them, and I should have. So just be aware if there's something underlined, it's probably a link to something. I'll organize it better for future slides. So here's, again, a brief overview. There's no testing required in any of these pieces when it comes to the learning theories, but just so that you're aware, this is one way of doing it. This is one summary of different types of learning theories that exist. So behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, we've got social learning theory, connectivism, and adult learning theory. So those are the broadest of learning theories. This particular, they call it a matrix, has them somewhere. They'll name all of the most famous scientists and theorists associated with each theory. So with behaviorism, we think of Pavlov and his dogs, for those who've done any introductory psych courses. So one learning theory is the fact that we're I think the video calls it a blank slate, something along those lines, a blank canvas, in that we learn in a response to something external. So a stimulus of some kind comes and affects the way that we're going to behave, whether it's going to be a positive or a negative stimuli. Stimulus is singular, stimuli is plural. So the idea of Pavlov's dogs is one of the most well-known experiments that they did when it had to do with trying to feed a dog and whether or not, I don't even remember I'm just so used to saying Pavlov's dogs that I don't remember the actual experiment. I'll look that up for anyone, unless someone can tell me off the cusp. Beth, you're gonna try it ish?
It's the ringing the bell, and then it salivates and eats. So it's the tangible.
The fact that the bell was associated with eating.
Yeah. So each time the bell goes, then they wanna.
Thank you very much. So it's the fact that the bell is the external stimuli, and the bell was associated with every time it rung, they were fed, and then eventually they didn't even need the food. That just the bell itself would make them salivate. Thank you. I knew the broad strokes, but I just could not remember them. So that's one type of learning theory. Cognitive theory is really the fact that our brains are kind of like computers, and we're collecting, that's not the right verb, but we process information, and it's the way that we process information. Constructivists, some of them are constructivists or socio-constructivism. They kind of like the social learning and the constructivism, they can be seen together if you put both pieces together. So constructivism is really learning by experience. So the fact that everything around us and how it affects us and how we react plays a part in how we learn. So these two, I don't think are part of the video, but they're there if you want to. Basically, we're heading towards adult learning. There is, again, I think I put a bunch of videos. We won't watch them all tonight, but they're there in case you really want to explore that. So I'm a qualified teacher for up to grade 6. So there's pedagogy involved when you're teaching little kids. And that's the correct term when we're thinking about teaching younger people. We use the term pedagogy. When we're in an environment where there are adult learners, that would be called andragogy. So that's the theory behind adult learning. So the fact that to me seems to be like that would be the most relevant to you is what motivates you as an adult learner to learn. So we'll put most of the emphasis on adult learning, but it's just so that you're aware that these exist. And as was shown already, I don't even remember all of the pieces, but the info is there and it's linked. This is linked to a video that goes into a little bit more detail for each of the theories, should you be interested. But that's like very high level overview of those pieces. So that's one batch of learning theories and theorists. Another one would be experiential learning, which I don't know if it's a committee, but there's like a department on campus that's their goal. So a lot of universities and higher education in general is leaning more towards including experiential learning opportunities and activities into courses, because the studies show that that's really how you learn. So it's in line with constructivism, in that you learn by how you feel and how you're reflecting on an experience, and how that will change your behaviors and change the way that you approach a future situation. So experiential learning is a lot of the pieces where, I mean, for me, I had experiential learning built right into my education degree. So all of the on-site training that I had when I was matched with I don't know what you guys call that in English, but like the teacher in whose classroom I got to observe everything. So that was experiential learning, where I got to observe her, how she did things. Then I got to do bits and pieces of putting together a classroom lesson, which the end result was me actually giving the lesson and going through all of the pieces and reflecting on every step and how I approach certain parts of the lesson. Then there was a whole reflective piece that I had to write. So that those experiences, more than anything else, is what I remember from my B.Ed. Like I couldn't tell you any of the courses that I took, because experiential learning is really where, especially as adult learners, we're going to take away the most. We're just going to take away the most from those experiences, because there's a need for us to know, to be able to apply it to a context that we've chosen to be in. So for me, teaching, following along and shadowing that teacher was the most valued experience that I had in my degree. So there's a lot of experiential learning that's going into more of the hands-on programs and courses, but it can happen in just about any program. So I think Laurentian is moving towards that, and just in general, we are, because that's a really effective way of learning. So again, all of these are videos. I tried to find a video in case you guys wanted to hear it from someone other than me. This one is another video, but I wanted to ask you the question. So I've told you you're an adult learner. Would anyone be able to tell me a reason why you'd be considered an adult learner, versus if we're doing pedagogy versus andragogy, but what's a quality or a characteristic of an adult learner other than your age? Sorry if most of you were like, I know adult learning is 18 and above because that's an adult. I mean, yes, that goes without saying, but what are the motivations? What made you, like, think about yourself. What made you choose to study at the university level? Okay, maybe someone told you had to, or it was just like the natural next step. But there are reasons that you're here in your program and you chose your particular program that distinguish you from a child who, I mean, it's required by law that they have to attend school to a certain, until they're 16, couldn't tell you. And the relationship between a child and the teacher is different than what you're hoping to get out of your interactions and experiences with your professors, instructors, and so forth. Nobody wants to try? You're all like, yeah.
Well, to start with, there was a comment in the chat box. The other part.
Thank you. Lost my chat box.
Yeah. The other part of it is there's a lot more responsibility on the more adult people, just because there's more of a need than it is, say, just a passion or a want. We're probably striving more for a necessity success versus following a dream or wanting to become something. Depending on how you look at it, there's more riding on it for us. There's less fallbacks. We have more risks. because if our success isn't successful, it puts more strain on the family.
Yeah, I think you've touched on almost all of, so adult learning theory, one of the main theorists is Malcolm Knowles. And Justin, you managed to touch on, I think, all of them, if not most of them. And yeah, so we're seeking better employment, and we're paid, most of you paid for your own education. So those are the fact that you're self-motivated, you're here for your own reasons. And Justin, you touched on the fact that there's a need. So you've identified a need, whether it's better employment, whether it's for whatever reason, you've chosen it, and it's based on values, goals, things that we did in week 2 last week. So that piece is that really distinguishes pedagogy versus andragogy or adult learning from other learners. Yeah, it's the fact that there's that piece of choice. So especially if you're an adult learner, in the more traditional sense, we think mature student when presented with adult learner, whereas a mature student is someone who's had a bigger break in between their last bit of education and the minute they choose to pursue higher education. So a mature student is someone who has I don't know what if there's a math equation involved in the gap. Whereas an adult learner is anyone at any age who has these traits or characteristics. So to kind of touch on, it's more specific to our interests, and our professors have knowledge specific to our areas of study. Oh, for sure, Beth. So this is, I realized after the fact, not my best work when it comes to the visual, but all of the images that I use in my PowerPoint, they have the source at the bottom, so you can click on it. So yeah, so it's the self-concept. You have an idea in your head of who you want to be, where you want to go. So you're self-directed. So you're choosing. The learner experience, you have all of this experience and knowledge, and I don't want to use the word baggage because sometimes we have like a negative connotation to it, but you're coming in with all of these experiences that I'm not saying someone who's 14 or 10 wouldn't necessarily have. Obviously they have their own experiences, but you have that many more influences in your choices. So that becomes a positive when you're learning at the post-secondary level. You're also, again, kind of goes back to choice, but you're ready to learn. So whether or not you feel forced to be in your particular program or your year of study or whatever, you're still able to consciously choose to learn, and you're consciously choosing, kind of linked to what Justin was saying about you're taking responsibility for your own learning, and you're ready for it. So orientation to learning, so that's the fact that everyone is, you have a specific need, you're looking for what's going to meet that need, and you're there. It's some people call it task-centered, I think, in that you have a goal and a focus in mind, and that's the education that you choose is how you're going to get there. And then the motivation is that last piece. I know I talked about it briefly, intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation last week, but you're, for the most part, self-motivated to be here. So those are the main characteristics or your assumptions of adult learners. So that's kind of encompasses everything that was said in the chat and what Justin shared. So I thought it was interesting to include this as Aboriginal ways of learning as well. So there is a cultural aspect that plays into pretty much your whole life. And I really liked just this visual of other ways of learning. So whether or not you identify or are Indigenous, there are even more ways to learn. So I like the fact that it's non-linear, so it's not an A, B, C situation, whereas you can have learning in multiple different contexts from any point in a traditional process, let's say. And a lot of Aboriginal ways of learning encompass or include a storytelling aspect. So it's the fact that things are transmitted mostly orally from one culture. Sometimes it's not hierarchical, but it's from one offsite, from ancestors. So from one, oh my gosh, from one generation. Thank you. I got there. From one generation to the next. So all of these pieces could also be part of your learning, whether or not you identify as Indigenous. So I thought that this was really cool to include. And again, there's a video. This links to the website. So every other, it's a link. You guys know what a hyperlink looks like for the most part. Just click on them if you want more information. They're all linked. So it's just something else to consider the cultural aspect of learning and how that does have an impact on you as a learner. So because I promised you guys that I would keep it relatively brief, I'm going to leave it up to you to watch videos for this chunk once I figure.
Hi, my name's Alex.
Okay. So, like I said, did it go back to sharing? Okay, thank you. I saw myself X out of it and then I don't know where it went and how it happened. So super brief overview, by no means an expert. I learn something new every time I do these courses and every time I do more research. So please, if you have questions, things to share, I love when students come and say, did you know that this existed or you have this resource as well? I'm happy to include them in the course. So just feel free to explore what I'm sharing with you. But yeah, that's just the Cliff Notes version. Is lots of people are researching different ways of learning, and research and studies exist everywhere, but it's just this whole course goes back to being more self-aware of how you learn. So take the pieces that you think are relevant to you and kind of start making this idea of who you are as a learner, so you have a better picture of who you are, so that we can identify what your needs are as a learner. That's the ultimate goal, is how can you be more successful? What are the things that we can develop either together or you on your own? So going to the assessments, the 4 that I mentioned as homework for tonight, the difficulties like I said, they're designed to help you kind of identify where your strengths are. But there's a tendency now to stop using the words learning styles and any other terminology that in your mind gives you this set in stone. It's super concrete and it's very static and it never changes. That's not at all the point of these assessments. Like I said, it's a snapshot of who you are. There are so many reasons why you will interpret a question a certain way and answer it a certain way, which, okay, maybe your results and your assessments never change. Like through time, they just, no matter what, you're always going to have relatively the same results. For me, because I've been teaching this course for a super long time, I do the assessments every year, but I'm so used to the types of questions that they ask, even if it's a different assessment, that I can already anticipate this question is linked to this intelligence. So that's another reason why not that my results are necessarily skewed, because it won't affect, well, it might still affect, oh shoot, sorry. It might affect how I answer, but all of those things play into why this is not by any means a situation in which this is, no, I'm a visual learner and that's the only way I ever learn. And no, it's your preferences more than anything else based on that particular time frame, which is why I tell students or recommend students to repeat these assessments more than once so that you can see if it is attendance. Sorry, I lost one of my Zoom, the little Zoom bar, and I don't know where it went, which is why I keep getting in and out of all of my things. Anyways, if there's a chat, I don't know where it is. I'll unshare and reshare in a second. So just keep that in mind when you do these assessments. You may already anticipate the types of responses or results that you're going to get. You may be totally spot on, but just keep all of that in mind when you're answering these assessments. So it is a snapshot of you right now in 2021 in January. You in April 2021 may have changed, could be the same results. I think I went over all that. Lost my speaking note, everything, so it's all good. So all of those factors play into what the results will tell you tonight or when you complete them before Thursday. So assessment number 1. If I were, spoiler alert, because most of you will know where I'm headed with this. Oh, good gosh. Okay. Those are the 4 assessments we're going to do tonight. Discuss, I should say. So I'll explain them all in a second. So if I were to read this poem, like I'm going to read it out loud. So if I were to read the beginning of this poem for you, I'm just going to put you in a couple of different scenarios and see how you would respond or react. So if someone read out loud, in Flanders Field, the poppies blow between the crosses, row and row that mark our place and in the sky. And I just left it like that. If this isn't a relevant example to you and you don't know the poem, that'll skew the results. But how many of you recited the rest of the poem in your head if you knew it? How many of you are bothered by the fact that this is 3 lines of a poem that has I don't know how many lines? Or how many of you are just like, I don't care about a poem whatsoever. So keep in mind how you responded. So for me, it might be partly just the fact that you can't start something and not finish it. But it could be the fact that in your mind, you recited the rest of the poem or the rest of the stanza, whatever that piece is. For those of you who don't know, this is in Flanders Field is the poem. I think this is the piece that they put on the $10 bill, if I'm not mistaken. At one point they had it there. So just keep that in mind. If it didn't speak to you whatsoever, that's one result that's possible. That's one response. If you needed to know the end, or if it just like without consciously choosing to, you finish the poem in your head, that's something else to keep track of. So this is how, this was done in a workshop. I didn't think it would go well online, so we'll see how this goes. This is how you would link to verbal linguistic intelligence, sorry. So if that spoke to you, that might mean you lean more towards that intelligence. You didn't do an assessment yet, so maybe not. It's just kind of get you thinking about them. So if I were to tell you how long to solve this problem, how long ago was 1,000,000 seconds? Some of you might have taken out a calculator. Some of you might have seen numbers and just went, I'm out. Some of you, like, it depends. Keep in mind how you reacted to this. Every year someone tries to give me the answer to this, and to me, because this type of intelligence doesn't speak to me, there's a reason why I don't put the answer. Because not everybody cares. Not everybody prefers to know this answer. Just like the poem, whether or not the poem finishes or you just leave it unfinished, doesn't bother you more than that. Someone might have to do the math. Like I said, some might be overwhelmed by math or just like, nope, I don't even want to look at this. So that would be your logical mathematical intelligence. This is a very simplistic way of looking at these intelligences, but it gets you thinking. If I were to tell you to close your eyes and picture the room that you are currently in, could you actually detail where the objects are? Can you see colors? Can you see where things are placed? Is it just like a big black screen in your mind? Like that's something that might play into a more spatial intelligence. So that could be something that you prefer or lean towards. I'm a student every year that they're just like, I didn't picture anything you said, miss. That's okay too. They're just, again, more about a self-awareness than anything else. The next one would be, so every year I get students to do this, and every year nobody does it. And I literally see Devin and Beth. So you don't have to choose to do this by any means. But if I told you to stand up, could you act out the following scenarios? So just taking a stroll in a nature trail, what would that look like? Versus walking through 3 feet of snow. Versus, I think the last one is hot pavement. Something like that. Yeah, hot pavement in the summer. So some students, every year, some students are super excited to oh, she told me I can get up and not do stand up, but we can act these things out. So you may, and if it was just more of for all I know, some of you are doing it right now, so they can't see you. But think about whether or not this did not interest you whatsoever, where you were super shy, or maybe you were doing it in a way that people wouldn't necessarily notice. This could mean you would lean more towards a bodily kinesthetic intelligence. So normally I poll the students afterwards and who are in like SPAD or sports psych, all of the programs that end up under health. A lot of the students in those programs tend to be more kinesthetic learners, and those are normally, not by any means everyone, they are the ones that participate. Oh, sorry, you guys, I found my chat function. You guys are answering each other. All right, perfect. So the next one, running to catch the bus. So complete this phrase. If someone said out loud, dum da da dum, did I do that right? Dum da da dum. And there was like a melody, sort of a melody to it, or some kind of music relation. That would be where you would maybe want to finish the line of the song. I'm gonna have to change that example because I don't remember how that song goes. I'll link it. Sorry, mental note, link to the song. Okay, so that might mean you're more. The irony is my results are always musical, and I can't remember this to save my life right now. So that would potentially mean a more musical intelligence. Then if I were to tell you to find a partner and you have to have the two of you each have a role and you have to ask each other questions and alternate back and forth until I tell you to stop. Who among you are like, there's no, like this is just anxiety level just shoots right up, or are you really pumped to be able to talk to a colleague or a classmate? So this, if you're like, yes, I'm super excited to be able to communicate and interact with someone else, you may prefer a more interpersonal intelligence where you like and learn best when interacting with others. Some students are just like, this does not interest me at all. This makes me super anxious to have to talk to somebody else. It might be that you don't lean towards that learning preference. If I were to ask you to reflect on the following, could you tell me what your greatest strengths and areas of weakness, or area improvement, weakness, liability, whatever term you want to use to oppose strength, would you be able to list out those things more like easily, not without too much struggle? So that might mean you lean more towards intrapersonal, where you have a high enough self-awareness. So inter, I-N-T-E-R, intra, I-N-T-R-A. So one is the ability or the preference to interact with others, and the other is to be able to reflect on yourself. So that's intra. And then I didn't know, the activity didn't give me naturalistic, so I didn't do it. But that's the 8th. Intelligence would be naturalistic, which doesn't necessarily mean you study in nature. It kind of just means that you're more in tune with your environment, and that plays a part in how you learn. So think more, the word environment works in English, but really in French, le mot environnement really hits home for me, that's more than anything what we mean with naturalistic. Yes, there are nature or natural elements to it, but overall, that's that particular preference. So that's it takes long enough. That was, I lived that experience in a workshop, and I thought it was really cool to get you thinking about those types of learning before you actually do the assessment. And this is based on Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. If you're super curious as to what he looks like, this is him. So you can hear him explain the multiple intelligences to you and kind of where he came up with that idea. The second, so that was multiple intelligence, that was assessment number 1. The second assessment is the personality spectrum. So that's just the term that way back when was in the textbook. So the resource that I linked to uses the same terminology because it's the same Pearson resource. So these are the 4 results that you can get within the personality spectrum. So are you more of a giver, organizer, adventurer, or thinker? If anyone has done anything personality-wise, I know there's one about a parachute. What color is your parachute? I think is a book that I read about that. I also attended the True Colors workshop where, again, your result is one of these 4. So if you've ever done that, the comparison is pretty accurate, that a giver would be a blue, an organizer would be a gold, a thinker would be a green, and an orange would be an adventurer. So either of those, if you've seen them before, that's kind of, they both come from the same place. So personality spectrum is a different assessment that you're going to do. The third one is VARK. So you will see it both ways, where some studies and websites will have VAK. So visual, this is the most traditional, the most well-known. When we talk learning styles and preferences, people automatically go to this one. I should say mostly go to this one, where it's, I'm a visual learner, I'm an auditory or oral learner, and then kinesthetic. So VAK is way back when, those were the learning, and when you look up learning styles, that's normally what's going to come up. VARK adds read/write as a 4th learning style. So that's another way of approaching learning preferences, is with the VARK. Sorry, I just had an Arthur moment. Made me think of the Aardvark song. Anyways, I'm sure nobody knows that reference at this point, but anyways. So for this one, just 5 questions. Again, a little bit of self-reflection on how you would respond to each of these scenarios. So just keep in mind, if you can, that they're color coded this time around. But so if I tell you you need to help a friend go to the airport, how do you help your friend get to the airport? I don't care which city you're in. Just picture, I gotta get to the airport. How are you going to help your friend? Are you just gonna like, come on, I'll go with you. We can do this together. Would you just be like, okay, here's how you get to the airport. You're going to take this road. You're going to take a left. You're going to go down the road. You're going to, at the second light, you're going to take a right, and you're going to tell them the directions out loud. Would you most likely write them down in words? Maybe you want to draw a map. But would you give them a piece of paper and be like, here's how you get to the airport? Oh, sorry. Or draw or give him a map. Okay. So what would you most likely do in that particular scenario? Just off the cusp, what would be your initial response? So that's, the colors are associated with the four learning styles. So VARK. So someone who is more kinesthetic is going to be the one who's going to physically go with them. Someone who is the A, so that would be K. The A would be auditory. So the fact that you're speaking the directions, writing them down would be the R. And then the V, the visual, would be drawing or giving them a map. So that's one way of, again, this is super specific to a particular scenario and how you would address it right now. It doesn't have any bearing necessarily on who you are as a person or a learner, but it's just kind of getting you thinking of what would your instinct or natural response be. So scenario number 2, you're going to cook dinner. So how do you prepare to cook dinner? Would you cook something just like, look in the cupboard, I've got this amount of ingredients, let's go for it? Would you use something suggested by a friend? Like, oh, I really like this recipe, you should try it. Would it be something that Pinterest, whatever the app or website or thing is to look at cookbooks, either for those of you who still have printed cookbooks, or you're looking for a pretty picture online, and you're like, I want to cook that. Or would it be just going to go with Old Faithful? I've used this 1,000 times before. It's always a good option. I'm just going to stick with what I know. So that's another way of approaching learning preferences. So if you have a new iPhone, or insert whatever appareil, whatever device you want, what's most likely going to affect what you buy as a device? Is it going to be the fact that you can, I mean, right now, COVID, I know, but the fact that you can physically manipulate whatever it is you're about to buy, you can go and test it in the store and try all the buttons out. Is it the fact that you're going to go read all of the specs online, figure out what the features are? Maybe there's a nice chart that compares this version versus that version. So you can do all of the research involved in that particular device. Would it be that you want something that's pretty, that looks really cool, it's very sleek design? Is that going to influence what you buy? Or would it be the fact that you get to go have a conversation with someone and they're talking to you about the device? So you put salesperson, but maybe it comes back to the other one where you're talking to other people who've had that particular phone and you're asking and talking about it with them. So keeping in mind all of those things, sorry, there's two more, but just to get you thinking. Generally speaking, a website, what would make you want to visit that website again? What makes you like a website? That there's a lot of buttons that you can click on, a lot of links, a lot of, it's very busy and you can do a lot of things. You're a little bit more active with the website. Is it the fact that, again, it goes back to, it's a very interesting organization, structure, design. It has a lot of visual features, whether or not it's really attractive colors, or maybe the way that it's organized, or there's a lot of, pictures or logos or whatever the case may be. Is it the fact that there's a lot of descriptions? Is it a lot of text and words? Or music, videos, interviews, those types of things where you can listen to them? So what website would you most likely want to visit? And number 5, again, you should see all of the answers link back to a V, A, R, or K. So your assignment is you have a speech to do in a class. So how would you prep your speech, your presentation in a course? Are you going to try and find a lot of graphs and things that are going to visually explain your particular topic? Is it the fact that you're just going to have some keywords and you're just going to like repeat and practice until like it's pretty much just some by heart? Is it that you're going to write down the entire speech word for word and just memorize your entire speech? Is that how you would prep for a presentation? Or are you going to try and find a lot of examples and anecdotes and things that are going to link to your audience and make it more relevant? So thinking about those types of things should give you, I mean, again, you probably have a really good idea of where you fall under the 4 letters. This is one way of approaching. If you answered mostly orange, then you're potentially more visual. I know there's not much distinction on the screen between orange and yellow, but auditory, read, write, or kinesthetic. So again, this could be a total shock to you, but most likely what you thought you were going to get, what the answers that you picked, all are in line with things that you already know. That's okay. Any questions about those 2, 3 assessments so far? Okay, I'm just trying to get you, again, you might have already seen all these, but get you in the mindset to be able to answer all the fun questions. Okay, so the last one is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So that's, this is a really intense of all of them. And it's, I don't want to say it's more accepted, but like I went to a career employment center or something where they try and match you to your ideal career. And the MBTI in particular is the one that they tend to use. It's, the assessments that I've normally done in the past are very intense. And the one on this is going to be the longest of the 4 that I've asked you to do. And I tried to find like the most compact, concise one out there. But so the Myers-Briggs type indicator is Jung Myers-Briggs. Those were the researchers involved in this particular matrix, I guess, or result, where you're going to have your result is going to be 4 letters. So it's going to be either E or I, and then it's going to be either S or N, followed by T or F, and then J and P. So there's 16 possible personality types based on this questionnaire. And you'll be able, like those who follow this a little bit more closely can know I don't want to compare it to your horoscope, but if someone were to say, oh, I'm an ENFP, they just know what that entails. So this is just one other, and I know that two of them have personality type in the titles, but it's just another way of how you would learn or approach certain situations. So I like to include all four assessments. So again, this one is a tad more intense when you go to fill it out, but I really like this particular website because it gives you kind of the traits of the personality. For those who are interested, it gives you like the celebrities that have the same personality as you. If you do a quick Google search and search MBTI with like TV show characters or whatever, they've got one for Harry Potter, the Game of Thrones, like you can associate to a particular character who has that same personality type. So there's a lot out there. But yeah, so you'd be looking at, so the 16 personalities is the actual name of the website. But this falls under the Myers-Briggs type indicator, MBTI. So that's what's in your immediate future is these four assessments. And I'm looking for the four results of those assessments. So keep track of them, write it down somewhere because you do have to include some version of your results in your portfolio anyways. So that's your assigned homework for tonight, in addition to the video. So 4 assessments, they're here. And like I said, they are already here on D2L. So that's part 1 is the 4 assessments that I just went through, answer the questions, quiz, whatever you want to call them. And then part 2 would be not necessarily to contradict me and everything that I just finished telling you for the last long time, 50 straight minutes, would be to watch this. So this is one of many videos out there. And again, you can do your own research if learning styles and preferences really interests you. So this is another TED Talk where she compares and analyzes learning styles. So again, learning styles, we interpret that as the VAK or the VARK. So she analyzes them and pretty much contradicts everything that I said in the fact that learning styles don't exist. So I want to present, and I want you to watch this and hear her, one of many points of view that are possible on the usefulness or the relevance, or I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give you ideas, but I don't want to influence your ideas, I should say. So it's just I recognize that she's going to contradict what I'm saying and kind of goes and says no, learning styles don't exist. So I want you to watch this and but like be prepared to share maybe why you think I assigned this or what your thoughts are on this, or just generally speaking. I talked for, like I just said, 50 minutes and presented 4 assessments. I might have said, yes, do this. I believe in this, but I tried to keep my opinions and my information very neutral because I see both sides of this, whereas some people are like, yeah, this totally makes sense. And these are accurate and these are, I don't want to say scientific, but yeah, we should be basing our choices and learning strategies on these, for most people, arbitrary tests, or maybe there are other options. So look for her comparisons and analysis of learning styles and what would be your takeaways from that. I do think that, if I remember correctly, she does kind of go through points in a rather organized way, so you'll be able to follow along. And then we're going to discuss the video and your results, not personally each one going over, these are my 4 results, but we'll do some group activities on Thursday based on the assessment, and then we'll have a discussion on this video. So maybe if it gets you thinking and kind of guides what you're looking for in the video, again, what's the link to what I just talked about? What's the link to the course? Why would I have picked this if you can't think of something to kind of speak on? Or you might have your own, well, not you might, you'll have your own thoughts and opinions on what I've said and what she said. So just be prepared to discuss that Thursday. Okay, this is going to be the last week. Tuesdays are going to be a lot more talking at you, and Thursdays are going to be a lot more we could do things together. So just keep that in mind because I know I talked a lot again tonight. Are there any questions about what I briefly just showed you tonight, and or the homework. Good to go. Oh, I see that, and I lost. I think someone has to like talk. Anyways, I lost the chat thing again. Ooh, should I stop sharing? Okay, sorry. I'm back, and I have the chat function. So it's on D2L. Like I said, technically this is the first hour of the class is done. I'm hoping that you use the rest of the time of this particular class to get the assessments and the video done. But as long as you do it in preparation for Thursday, that's all I had to say tonight. If you have any questions, I stay. If not, happy Tuesday, and I will see you on Thursday. Have a good night.